This timeline documents key dates and events that occur between the 12th and 23rd centuries in the universe of Deus Ex. This world does share many similarities with the real world. However, there are supposedly, at least, some major divergences between the two during the 20th century and beyond. So let's start with the 1100s, and we'll start with the year 1118, where the Order of Knights Templar is founded in Jerusalem, when Baldwin II of Jerusalem is approached by a French knight, Hugh Darrow, who proposes creating a monastic order to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. Baldwin II approves this and allows Darrow and his 8 fellow knights to set up headquarters in the city temple. Shortly thereafter, they become known as the Poor Knights of the Temple, or Knights Templar for short.
In 1129, at the Council of Troyes, the Knights Templar are officially recognized and approved by the church, and are assigned a white mantle to wear, with a red cross added later. In the coming years, Knights Templar quickly become popular in Europe. Soon they are exempted from all local laws and authority except for that of the Pope, and their lands exempted from all taxes.
So in the 1200s, the Knights Templar invent the use of travelers' cheques to protect the pilgrims' valuables. Pilgrims would deposit valuables in a local Templar house, receive a letter of credit, and use this letter to withdraw the funds upon arriving to Jerusalem. This innovative arrangement established the foundations for modern banking.
In 1218, construction of Cathedral de Payen begins in Paris, financed by the Knights Templar as part of a similar network of churches, cathedrals, and forts throughout Britain, Europe, and the Holy Lands.
In the 1300s, so in either 1304 or 1307, it's not clear which, King Philip IV develops a plan to suppress the Knights Templar. He orders the arrest of all Templars in France and has them tortured into admitting heresy in the order. Shortly before or after that crackdown, the Templars secretly moved the gold of the French treasury to the Cathedral de Payen, where it has remained since.
In 1311, the Knights Templar are officially dissolved by apostolic decree issued by the Pope Clement V. However, the organization continues to operate in secret after this fact.
So moving to 1453, on the 29th of May, Constantinople falls to an invading army of the Ottoman Empire. Forerunners of the Illuminati see a rise of opportunity.
In the 1700s, at some point, Adam Weishaupt is born in Ingolstadt in Germany.
So in 1776, Adam Weishaupt forms the Order of Perfectibilists, also known as the Illuminati.
In 1786, in Paris, remains from the grossly overcrowded Cemetery of Innocents are exhumed and moved to the quarries of Montrouge, which will eventually later become known as the Paris Catacombs.
So in 1900, 90% of Americans are self-employed. Within 150 years, the number will drop to 2%.
In 1914, on the 28th of June, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria is assassinated in Sarajevo. The event leading up to the First World War is set in motion and provides the Illuminati with another rise of opportunity.
And in 1918, Cathedral de Payen is purchased and renovated by a group of European investors as a corporate retreat.
In the 1940s, the Illuminati gathers genetic data through the administration of smallpox vaccinations. This continues for over 2 decades.
From 1941 to 1945, U.S. Army Air Corps constructs airfields near the Dry Groom Lake in Nevada. After World War II, the site is abandoned, but a decade later it will become the secret base Area 51. The Duclair family acquires the property for Chateau Duclair after the Nazis send the previous owner to a camp in Germany for hiding Jewish families during World War II.
In 1945, July 16th, Project Trinity detonates the first atomic bomb, providing the Illuminati with another opportunity. American corporations pay 50% in federal taxes. In 100 years, this number will drop to about 5%.
In 1947, an unidentified flying object, or UFO, is reported to have crashed intact at Roswell, New Mexico. Wreckage and corpses of 5 grey aliens are reportedly recovered by US military investigators. United States Air Force begins Project Sign to investigate flying saucer reports. The US president forms a separate secret blue ribbon panel codenamed Majestic 12 to study alien technology and biology.
In 1948, Project Sign is replaced with Project Grudge. Emphasis switches from objective reporting and investigation to denying of the Roswell incident and aggressive debunking of UFO reports. Majestic 12 operations seemingly continue uninterrupted.
In 1949, Project Grudge operations are drastically reduced to just one investigator.
In 1951, Project Sign/Project Grudge files are reopened under the name Project Blue Book.
In 1954, the Bilderberg Group is created by the Illuminati to control financial matters around the world through vast mining operations, control over the Federal Reserve Board, the Eurobank and the World Bank, as well as through a stranglehold on the world's supply of gold.
In 1955, Groom Lake site is recommissioned as a top-secret test site for the U-2 spy plane. Airspace is restricted, hangars, runways, and other buildings are constructed.
In 1958, Groom Lake Air Force Base is removed from the index of U.S. public lands, first official designation of this site as Area 51.
In 1960s, Paolo Soleri develops the concept of Arcology, a fusion of architecture with ecology. The Arcology aims to eliminate wasteful consumptions of land, energy, and time by putting living, working, and public spaces within easy reach of each other, making walking the main form of transportation. Real arcologies will be built 100 years later in Cairo and other cities by the World Trade Organization.
In 1961, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology introduces the world to MH1, the first computer-operated mechanical hand. Nearing human likeness, the MH1 has a hand-arm combination of 35 degrees of freedom and is sensitive to pattern recognition and simulation of higher cognitive processes.
In 1963, on November 10th, President John F. Kennedy states that the high office of president has been used to foment a plot to destroy the Americans' freedom, and before I leave office, I must inform the citizen of his plight. The remark angers the Illuminati, whom it is obviously referencing, and in November 22nd, President Kennedy is assassinated by the Illuminati for these comments.
In 1965, the Illuminati finished tracking those who receive a smallpox vaccine. From this, they are able to build a database of the genetic codes of nearly all citizens of the United States and much of the rest of the world.
In 1968, Tong Si Hung is born.
And in 1969, Project Blue Book is closed by the United States Air Force after Condon report concludes that no UFO data has contributed significantly to US national security or scientific progress. Majestic 12, however, reportedly continues to operate in secret.
In the 1970s, computers with the ability to automatically sift through massive quantities of information for specific keywords begin operation. In the early 1970s, Santo is founded in France as a waste management company. And in the late 1970s, Santo wins a contract to partially rebuild the crumbling Paris sewer system despite grumblings of bid undercutting. Declan Faherty is born around 1975 to 1980 in Dublin, Ireland.
In 1970, David Sarif is born to an immigrant family from Boston. And Athena Margulis is born.
In 1972, William Taggart is born. Hugh Darrow is born in Blackheath, South London. Twin brothers Salah and Wasim Alam are born in Afghanistan. And in July, David Rockefeller forms the Trilateral Commission.
In 1975, the Altair 8800 is released, marking the birth of the microcomputer era.
In 1977, Tai Yong Medical is founded in Shanghai as a designer/manufacturer of silicon prosthetic limbs. and little K's father is imprisoned for his involvement in publishing Charter 77.
In 1978, an Australian professor develops the first safe, effective sensorineural biotechnology that directly connects electronic technology to physiological contact within the central nervous system. With the help of this new technology, his patient becomes the first human in the world to receive a multi-channel cochlear implant after losing his hearing from injury sustained to the head. The implantation proves to successfully give him the ability to regain partial hearing and pitch perception.
In the 1980s, the US National Security Agency designs the Echelon system by interconnecting all SIGINT information gathering computers in the UK-USA agreement into an integrated whole.
In 1981, Jim Miller is born.
In 1982, Nia Colvin is born to a blue-collar family in Detroit. The Falklands War occurs this year. Events during this conflict sow the seeds of dissent that will later result in the creation of the private military contractor Bell Tower.
1983, Elias Chicane is born.
In 1984, early Majestic 12 documents are leaked to UFO investigators. These documents are quickly denounced as hoaxes.
In 1985, the Picus Group is formed by Sir Martin Darrow. Zhao Yan Ru is born, and Isaias Sandoval is born.
In 1986, Duncan McReady is born, and Ashani Talwar is born in Calcutta, India.
In 1987, the first implantation of a deep brain electrical stimulation system and the first LASIK eye surgery are performed on human patients. John Trent is born.
1988, Jaron Namir is born in Haifa, Israel. Talos Rucker is born into an upper middle class couple in Stuttgart, Germany. And Masaki Oshiro is born in Yokohama, Japan.
In the late 1990s, White Helix Labs are destroyed in a fire started by Adam Jensen's biological parents, who attempted to put an end to the genetic experiments performed at the facility.
In 1990, Bob Page is born.
And in 1991, Francis Pritchard and Viktor Marchenko are born.
1992, Lawrence Barrett is born.
And 1993, on March the 9th, Adam Jensen is born. And in the same year, Aaron Singh and Hector Guerrero are born.
In 1994, Alex Vega is born. Delara Azuen is born in Paris, France, and Daniel Fletcher is also born. Mark Thorpe hosts the world's first Robot Wars competition in San Francisco, California.
In 1995, Megan Reed is born in Seattle, Washington. And in the same year, Hugh Darrow severely damages the anterior cruciate ligament in his knee during a skiing accident. This injury leaves him with a permanent physical disability, but also acts as the inspiration for his research into mechanical augmentations.
In 1996, Hugh Darrow purchases and revamps a struggling prosthetics manufacturing company in England, creating his own Darrow Industries. With his family's considerable assets at his disposal, Darrow ensures that this, as well as his claims to the importance of this event, makes front-page news.
In 1997, the sovereignty of Hong Kong is handed over by the UK to the People's Republic of China. A top official of China's Central Law Enforcement Agency publicly acknowledges his acceptance of the triad. He states that many of its members are patriotic to the motherland. It is unknown if this is a government stance or a personal opinion. The private military contractor Bell Tower UK is formed by Roger St. John Folks.
In 1998, the first brain implant capable of stimulating movement is installed in a human patient by researchers of Emory University. The device, or neurotrophic electrode, is implanted into the brain, allowing cortical cells to grow and form neural contacts. After several weeks, the cortical tissue grows into the electrode. This allows a person to interact with the world as if they were using a computer. Professor Ellen Heber-Katz discovers the world's first regenerative mice, the MRL strain.
In 1999, on January the 1st, Austria, Belgium, Finland, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Portugal, and Spain succumbed to Majestic 12 pressure exerted by the Economic and Monetary Union of the European Union and adopt the euro as their currency. In the same year, Farida Malik is born in Dearborn, Michigan, US.
In the early 2000s, Santo Water is now actual water is now the major water treatment and supply conglomerate on the globe and controls much of the planet's fresh water.
In the year 2000, Shadow Child is born. Erik Koss is also born in Norway. The artificial silicon retina, or ASR, is implanted for the first time in the eyes of 3 nearly blind patients. Containing approximately 3,500 microscopic solar cells that convert light into electrical impulses, the new technology works to replace damaged photoreceptors that normally convert light into electrical signals within the retina. In the same year, Japan renews its defense obligations with the United States and embarks on a costly rearmament program.
In 2001, January 1st, Greece adopts the euro. Yelena Fedorova is born. Assigned birth year of the AI Eliza Kasan. Peter Chang is born. A high-power lineman who, after losing both of his arms through severe electric shock, receives a life-changing computerized biohybrid arm, is dubbed one of the first functional cyborgs. His fully robotic limb operated through a nerve muscle graft that uses microcomputers instead of cables to perform a wide range of complex motions. It is also the first prototype enabling its carrier to sense pressure. And on September 11th, a terrorist attack destroys the World Trade Center towers in New York City. The event is described as yet another rise of opportunity for the Illuminati, and the first in many years.
In 2002, both Ivan Burke and Vaclav Kola are born. After 6 years of intense research, Darrow Industries scientists successfully intertwine PEDOT electrodes with live neural cells, creating a biocompatible matrix that better enables acceptance of prosthetic materials by organic tissue. Taiwanese President Chen Shui-bian calls for a referendum to decide whether Taiwan should declare independence. China immediately threatens to use force should the vote occur. The implementation of the euro is complete. As a result, most of Europe and its territories are subjects to the economical control of Majestic 12. Declan Faherty works for British Ministry of Defence.
In 2003, following national elections, the United Kingdom adopts the euro as currency. The Illuminati now fully controls Europe's finances, and Europe later becomes a financial satellite of Majestic 12. Implantable Cardioverter Defibrillator, or an ICD, is introduced to the US market. Engineers in Copenhagen fabricate demoisonite, a revolutionary carbon fiber material that paves the way for the creation of lighter and more durable prosthetics. And also a US-led multinational coalition of armed forces invades Iraq in search of weapons of mass destruction. Iraq falls within a month and no WMDs are found.
In 2004, the Czech Republic joins the European Union. Development begins for Project Phoenix, a new initiative implemented by the US military, inviting amputee soldiers serving in the 2 Persian Gulf conflicts to volunteer for advanced prosthetic research. Bell Tower UK becomes Bell Tower Associates, an umbrella group including companies such as Bell Tower Maritime Security, Bell Tower Alpha, Hack Wall Data Protection Services, and Sky Secure Aviation.
In 2005, Project Echelon, a global surveillance system designed to monitor all net traffic, is reportedly relocated into Area 51. Building on their earlier creation of PEDOT clusters, Darrow Industries scientists create a revolutionary biosensor that vastly improves the connection between the human nervous system and artificial limbs. The new technology brings researchers one step closer to thinning the line between prosthetic and organic. China passes its anti-secession law, authorizing immediate war with Taiwan should Taiwanese independence forces ever succeed in separating Taiwan from China.
In 2006, the Human Brain Project, an international scientific research project aimed at understanding and completely mapping brain functions, launches in the US and Great Britain.
In 2007, inside the Serif manufacturing plant, looking to increase the efficiency of advanced prosthetics production, David Serif purchases and overhauls an auto factory in Detroit. Shortly after, Serif creates a system that automates the manufacturing of advanced prosthetics, converting the newly purchased plant into the first auto-mechanical augmentation factory. DARPA, or DARPA, starts looking for research partners to help develop an artificial cognitive science program that could increase a soldier's situational awareness in the field. A number of private sector companies, including VersaLife, submit proposals. VersaLife believes a successful program can be designed if it can be wired directly into the soldiers' brains. DARPA declines VersaLife's proposal, not willing to go that far. VersaLife then takes the idea to its partner, a private military corporation, Bell Tower Associates. This project, under the supervision of the Illuminati, will later be known as the Hiron Project. And Masaki Oshiro, age 19, founds the Ungyo Data Protection Company in Japan. Nina Sullivan is born, and Nia Colvin graduates the magna cum laude from MIT with a degree in biochemistry.
So in 2008, the controversial Omega Ranch begins to take shape with support from the United Nations and several major biotech companies, including VersaLife. Leading the development, the World Health Organization begins construction on the new center that will pave the way for research into viral genetics and biological sciences. Taiwan declares independence during the Summer Olympic Games in Beijing. 1 month later, China launches an invasion. The US and Japan do nothing. Taiwan falls in just 6 days. In August, a cholera outbreak starts in Zimbabwe and lasts until June 2009, resulting in 4,288 deaths. Conspiracy theorists believe the outbreak is man-made and is part of the Illuminati's human depopulation agenda. Nia Colvin is hired by Latham Systems.
In 2009, Zhao Yunru joins Taiyong Medical as CEO. Stretched thin by 2 Mid-East conflicts, the US Congress passes the Recycle Military Bill, financing free prosthetics for any wounded veteran who re-enlists. With little competition, Serif Industry wins the lucrative prosthetic manufacturing contract and becomes the #1 prosthetic manufacturer in all of America. Wide-ranging cutbacks in the British, American, German, and Russian military put many trained soldiers out of work. Bell Tower cherry-picks the best of these men to bolster its own forces. Capitalizing on the world reaction to Taiwan's fall, Tibet declares independence. Chinese forces swoop in to completely crush the rebellion in just 4 days. Photos smuggled out afterwards show a large number of prosthetic-equipped soldiers amidst the invading army.
In the early 2010s, construction of Hotel Novo Rostov begins in Moscow, Russia. The acoustic wave theory is proposed, which claims that seismic activity emits acoustic wave energy within certain frequencies that could carry the potential to trigger sympathetic quakes up to thousands of miles from the original epicenter. This theory has since been rejected by many geologists as untenable.
So in 2010, on August 4th, Zhao Yunru graduates from the University of Beijing with a degree in biology and nanotechnology. German researchers published the results of a revolutionary study suggesting how information may be coded in neural activities. Taiwanese rebels make a last-ditch effort to overthrow the Chinese occupation. Worldwide news reports reveal squads of augmented soldiers brutally demolishing all resistance. Riots break out at the Vancouver Winter Olympics when disabled athletes arrive en masse to protest the IAAF rules.
2011, Internet 3 Hub is moved to the Area 51 underground laboratories. Darrow Industries publishes Fittest XY, the first test capable of identifying if a subject suffers from a rare genetic disorder that makes acceptance of an implant not only possible but also deadly. As augmentations become increasingly commonplace, entrepreneur Hayden Soo-young envisions the creation of healthcare clinics that cater exclusively to the specific needs of prosthetic-equipped patients. After borrowing 50 million euros from Hugh Darrow, the dream becomes reality and the first clinic for augmented humans opens. This will later become known as limb clinics. Blue Water Global, America's largest private military organization, disbands due to a scandal that rocks the PMC industry to its core. Bell Tower takes advantage of the situation to fill the vacuum left in their wake.
In 2012, as part of their ultimate exit strategy out of Iraq, the US military sends squads of prosthetic-equipped soldiers into the heaviest conflict zones. The Human Brain Project publishes a first draft map of the brain depicting populations of neurons involved in complex phenomena like reminiscence, future simulation, etc. Germany boycotts the London Summer Olympic Games and sends its athletes to compete at the Paralympic Games instead. Picus Communications broadcasts the augmented competition and sweeps the ratings.
So in 2013, Ophelia Carter publishes a conspiracy-related book, The Wheels Come Off, supposedly demonstrated that there could have been no Soviet-American pact because America had already sold out to the Greys. According to this theory, the polio and influenza outbreaks of the later 20th century were test runs in a larger governmental biowarfare program. Pretty apt. A milestone in the development of augmentation is reached when the 50th healthcare clinic for mechanically augmented patients opens in New Delhi, with nearly 50,000 patients visiting the facility in its first week. At the opening ceremony, Hayden Su-young calls his network of clinics Limb International for the first time. A year after emerging as an underground prosthetic ultimate fighting movement, the Augmented Combat Challenge is accepted as a legal sport in 12 countries. Bets taken online and in Vegas turns into a multi-million-dollar circuit as the sport's popularity rapidly grows. The South American Economic Coalition is formed, headquartered in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
In 2014, Brian Nittel becomes the first patient with Down syndrome to successfully receive a deep brain implant capable of stimulating portions of the brain in order to significantly increase natural cognitive functions. The implantation works better than imagined, and Nittel is able to lead a near-normal life. The volcanic Vilama Caldera complex in Argentina unexpectedly erupts in a powerful supervolcanic explosion, blanketing huge swaths of land in Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia with hot ash. Over 100,000 people are killed, but the world finds hope in augmented humans as they play a major role in the region's rescue and recovery operations. Their enhanced abilities save many lives and prove to make a crucial difference in the relief of this disaster. A measles outbreak in Congo results in 4,500 or more deaths. Conspiracy theorists believe it was another man-made outbreak. After having banned augmented athletes years earlier, plans to rewrite the guidelines and rules governing international athletic competitions are announced. We can no longer ignore the augmented population. They are obviously a part of our world, and this is a worldwide competition, says voting board member Harris Stevenson. Adam Jensen joins the Detroit Police Department, and Ashani Talwar and Masaki Oshiro are two of the richest people under 30 in the world. After a chance meeting in Switzerland, they fall in love and marry.
In 2015, rumors begin to circulate that countries are experimenting with new, intelligence-enhancing technology by secretly implanting the device in military and counterintelligence offices. As leaked intelligence from Asia and Europe begins to corroborate the story, a fear of falling behind these imposing advancements accelerates global biotechnical research to new levels. Terrorist attacks against Saudi Arabian oil fields decimate the country's infrastructure and plunge the world into a major crisis. In response, an emergency session of the US Congress passes the Green River Energy Bill, opening protected oil shale deposits in Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming to development. Seeing the challenges and dangers of drilling in the areas, oil companies begin quietly recruiting augmented war veterans to work at unusually high salaries. Fallout from the enactment of the Green River Bill also opens up new emergency powers for FEMA and the NSA, created in preparation for the possibility of civil unrest in the wake of the looming energy crisis. China secretly begins implanting deep brain intelligence-enhancing implants in its military and counterintelligence offices. An incident on Earth orbit, resulting in the death of the crew of a corporate space shuttle, takes place. The accident is blamed on pilot error, but exact details are never released. Rumors of a Chinese military presence in space are rife.
In 2016, a Chinese pilot equipped with a deep brain intelligence-enhancing implant defects to the US base in the Philippines. The US military immediately attempts to reverse engineer the chip. The Singularity Faith of the Machine God, SFMG, a quasi-religion pro-augmentation group, is formally recognized as a new church. Orgs originally formed in the SFMG in 2011 in response to being shunned for going against religious scripts that declare it unholy to biologically desecrate their bodies. New elections in the Russian Federation herald sweeping changes across the region as a series of newly elected officials take power in a bloodless coup d'etat. The renamed Russian Federated States take a firm stance in the global political arena. In the Arctic and several other oceans across the globe, construction begins on the Pangaea project, a a vast geoengineering experiment funded by the United Nations and a consortium of corporate interests in order to combat global warming through iron seeding.
In 2017, Australia votes to become the Republic of Australia. New Zealand later becomes an associate state 6 months later. In an attempt to catch up to the rapid advancements of rival nations, the US military awards Sarif Industries a top secret, no-bid contract to manufacture intelligence-enhancing chips. Dallas becomes a self-declared protected city-state, paving the way for several other so-called fortress cities to come into being over the next decade. The US Congress passed the Corporate Sovereignty Act. Taiyong Medical invests into the construction of Hengsha Island's two-tiered city on the Yangtze River. The company will build its corporate headquarters in the center of Hengsha. Palisade Bank is founded with headquarters in the Czech Republic. First documents surface referring to a Project Aquinas. And then Canada enacts the Paulson Program, a gradual strengthening of its borders and military capacity in the face of economic pressure from its southern neighbor. The most contentious element of the program is the radical decision to force the nationalization of Canada's rich oil sands deposits, securing the country's energy bounty for itself. US-Canadian tensions intensify from this point on.
In 2018, Paul Denton is born. Adam Jensen joins the DPD's SWAT team under the command of Captain Quincy Durant. A containment breach occurs in Omega Ranch, allowing a modified variant of the H5N1 avian flu virus to escape into the atmosphere, killing hundreds of thousands of people. VersaLife and its corporate partners subsequently cut all ties with the facility. The International Space Station is formally transferred to the control of the United States Air Force's Space Command. In response, China's scientific Shenlong space platform is immediately militarized. The Picus Group launches its 400th communications satellite and opens a new virtual channel serving the Chinese bloc, effectively giving it the longest global reach of any entertainment and news channel on the entire planet. Zofia Ruzicka is elected president of the Czech Republic in a landslide election, becoming the country's first female president. Under her leadership, the Republic experiences an economic boom, turning Prague into one of the world's leading metropolitan cities. Declan Fahey moves to the United States and is hired by Sarif Industries, and Japan's economy enters a serious downturn over the next 3 years. The nation goes through radical changes within its government and corporate structures in an attempt to stop the encroaching collapse.
In 2019, the New Christ Initiative emerges as a US-based coalition of forward-looking Christian groups that embraces and encourages cloning, augmentation, and the furtherment of biotechnology. Traditionalist Christians hold protest but cannot stop the membership of the New Christ Initiative from growing 300% in its first year. Bell Tower Associates, an umbrella group of private military contractors, institutes their new augmentation program, Plan Infinity. The program offers soldiers immediate augmentations while deferring payment for as long as they remain active employees of Bell Tower. Omega Ranch is closed down and sanitized. It is then quietly placed into the stewardship of a UN committee. Hayden Soo-young repays the last €1 million of his original debt to Hugh Darrow while simultaneously opening the 125th Limb International Clinic in Utah. Scandal rocks the world when a contestant on the highest rated game show in history is caught using an intelligence-enhancing brain implant. He is later revealed to have been fired by Sarif Industries in 2018. The HAARP, or High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program facility in Alaska, is active again.
In the 2020s, mechanical augmentations are just becoming widespread. In the early 2020s, work on nano augmentations began. The Majestic 12 scientists assigned to the project, including Bob Page, have a number of difficulties. A self-replicating nanite that can interact with biological material has to be developed. The nanites must be able to interpret commands directly from the mind and send information back to the mind in a form that can be interpreted. This will take years to develop. A test subject matching MJ12's selection criteria is needed as young as possible. In the early 2020s as well, a hacker named Eli posts a call to arms message on the darknet inviting those disillusioned with the stranglehold 1%ers have on the world to join and spoiling their plots. This event is considered the beginning of the Juggernaut Collective. Australia finds a large underground reserve of fossil fuel off the coast of Antarctica. With the fossil fuel crisis worldwide, tensions between North and South Australia rise, and an Australian civil war begins. And this is when the events of Deus Ex, Fallen Angel take place.
In 2020, the Californian secessionist movement is narrowly defeated in a public referendum. In the United States, Antoine Tisdale, a completely healthy man unable to find work in Utah's increasingly lucrative oil shale industry, sues for the right to amputate himself. Darrow Industries sold the patent to Neuropozyne, an anti-augmentation rejection drug, to VersaLife. Hugh Darrow fires the entire research staff and begins to sell off branches of Darrow Industries. Speculation regarding his plans for an early retirement abound. Quincy Durant is severely injured during an encounter with an augmented criminal. Having moral objections against it, he voluntarily submits to extensive augmentation. Durant is later put in charge of a new unit of augmented SWAT officers. Adam Jensen is given command of Durant's old unit. Megan Reed is hired by Starrett Industries. Nia Colvin is fired after Taiyong Medical's hostile takeover of Latham Systems and is subsequently hired by Starrett Industries. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police come under investigation when they use lethal force to deter a horde of American economic refugees, nicknamed Snowbacks, from crossing the Montana-British border near the town of Roosevelt. The RCMP officers are later cleared of any wrongdoing, further inflaming existing tensions between the US and Canada.
In 2021, Hugh Darrow purchases a mega ranch and reopens it with a new team of researchers by Christmas. Quincy Durant's SWAT unit massacres the entire Kowalski Bros gang at the El Diablo lap dancing club. The United Arab Front, UAF, launches a massive invasion of Israel, triggering the 6-month war. China's Upper City construction project is completed in the Shanghai region. Chongming's trio of islands, Hengsha Island being one of them, become a corporate fiefdom, with Taiyong Medical free to be a law unto itself. Bell Tower Associates is now regarded as the world's #1 private military contractor, and the Czech Republic's economic boom, combined with its policy of offering tax breaks to augmented laborers, transforms Prague into a hub for transient contract workers passing back and forth between Eastern Europe and the EU nations. At the same time, the lack of housing for these short-term inhabitants becomes a big issue. In a last-ditch attempt to stave off economic disaster, Japanese Prime Minister Ataru Moroboshi institutes a new policy of neo-sakoku, all but closing the country's borders to outsiders in an echo of events in the 17th and 19th centuries. Japan turns inward in an attempt to heal itself.
In 2022, Antoine Tisdale, an unaugmented oil rig worker, sues for the right to have both of his fully functional natural arms amputated and replaced with cybernetic arms in an effort to compete with mechanically augmented workers in his profession. The Supreme Court rules in his favor, clearing the way for augmentation. In response to the ruling, William Taggart creates Humanity Front, a political organization that opposes augmentation. After the Pan-Arab coalition invades Israel, the Illuminati control of the region becomes total. LIM International opens the first clinic in Brazil and the 359th in the world. This amid a gathering of Humanity Front protesters, members of a group who believe the human body is sacred and should not be tampered with. In Central America, an epidemic of tubercular parotitis leaves 100 plus dead and 25,000 plus sterile. Conspiracy theorists believe it was yet another man-made epidemic.
In 2023, 5-year-old Paul Denton is chosen as a test subject and is cloned. Quincy Durant, now corrupt SWAT unit, has violently taken down half the organized crime groups in the city, taking over their operations for themselves. Border skirmishes on the outskirts of El Paso between the Texas National Guard and the Mexican Army create a tense standoff that lasts for several months. Mexico eventually backs down, but the Mexican government's pride is dented. Taking advantage of the situation, representatives of the Russian Federated States make overtures to Mexico City. Pressed by an ever-increasing influx of temporary workers on one side and a lack of adequate housing on the other, the Czech government hires the Santu Group, a European-based construction giant, to build a massive one-of-a-kind temporary housing project on the outskirts of Prague. It will be named the Utulek Complex.
In 2024, an investigative news report reveals that a high-profile contestant on a popular American game show had been implanted with an intelligence-enhancing chip prior to his appearance on the program. The scandal causes a significant upswing in popular opposition to the largely unregulated augmentation industry. Humanity Front's membership grows sizably as a result. Sir Roger St. John Ffoulkes officially stepped down as CEO of Bell Tower, giving joint control of the company to his sons Luther and Andrew. In reality, he has served only as a figurehead of this post for the last decade anyway. Eric Koss moves to the United States and is hired by Sarif Industries.
In 2025, the Juggernaut Collective makes their debut on the hacker scene when they hijack atmospheric processors used by a popular weather artist in Paris, trashing an event sponsored by Page Industries. In Quebec, Quebec begins agitating for a referendum on independence, but the Canadian Parliament are resistant, with public interest in the issue lost. The separatist movement eventually falls apart. Rising Nigerian pop star Nyalashia Akim is critically injured during a terrorist attack in Lagos. Her songs about growing up in a poor, war-torn and plague-ridden Nigeria had captured the heart of fans all over the world. Many stage candlelight vigils. The Mexican town massacre occurs, and Adam Jensen refuses the order to shoot an augmented teenager. The order is passed on to Wayne Haas. The boy's death provokes the worst riots Detroit has seen since the 1960s. In the aftermath of the riots, a shootout ensues between Jensen and Quincy Durant's team, and in the final confrontation, Durant is badly wounded by Jensen. He is retrieved by Jake Dredger, whom Jensen had approached with info on Durant's criminal activities 2 days before the incident. Acting on orders from the Illuminati, Durant is further augmented and the incident is covered up to save the Detroit Police Department of the embarrassment. Jensen then resigns and is blamed for the entire incident by his superiors. He is hired as the new chief of security at Sarif Industries soon afterwards. Automated defenses inside one of the Palisade Bank's data storage facilities killed an engineer, and her death drew international attention until it was proven that she had been trying to access a client's account illegally.
In 2026, construction of Rabia begins in Oman deserts, but is plagued by technical problems. The Deus Ex Icarus effect begins. 582 significant international terrorist attacks occurring this year. In the wake of ongoing terrorist atrocities, the United Nations begin a series of evaluation studies considering the future creation of a new transnational anti-terror force.
In 2027, events of Deus Ex Icarus effect continue. Death of investigative reporter Casey Bradshaw. She is officially listed as a casualty of the Australian Civil War. Conspiracy theorists, however, allege that she was killed for exposing the government-sanctioned nuclear proliferation in Australia. The events of Deus Ex The Fall also occur here. Britain's Queen's augmentation sparks outrage. VersaLife announces that they have successfully cured AIDS in laboratory mice using nanites. Nadine Stolik escapes custody in New York when a law enforcement 80X boxguard robot opens fire on the police. Li Hong murders his pregnant girlfriend, Evelyn Carmichael. Lim International, heavily invested by Hong's family, falsifies the autopsy report. Events of Deus Ex Human Revolution and The Missing Link occur in this year as well. Second World Enhanced Games scheduled for summer 2028 in Asia. 9,300 augmented athletes expected to compete. Nashia Akim, now fully augmented, sweeps the Planet Music Awards in Los Angeles, winning in 6 categories. Joshua Corbin, a member of the New Sons of Freedom, bombs the Capitol building of the state of Washington in Olympia. Simultaneously, his organization calls for the Pacific Northwest to secede from the US. According to the United Nations Terrorism Task Force, the number of serious international terrorist incidents grew to 1,285, up from 582 in the previous year. Bell Tower Associates' 12th Regiment brings the Australian Civil War closer to an end by quelling an uprising in the northern territories of the continent. Page Industries speeds up its plans to build the first permanent commercial space station named Heaven. The Org incident occurs, 50 million people die and hundreds of thousands more are injured. In Prague during the incident, Zofie Ryschika augmented bodyguards go insane, crashing their limo into the Vtalfa River and killing them both. Her death heralds a turning point for the Czech government, and in the months that follow, pro-org representatives and the laws they'd set in place will be ousted and overturned one by one. In the Arctic Sea, rescue crews swarm over Panchaea, searching for survivors. David Seraph is one of the few pulled out alive. Hugh Darrow, Xiao Yunru, and William Taggart top the list of missing and are presumed dead. After a week, the rescue effort will be downgraded to one of recovery, and the world will turn its attention elsewhere. Finally, in December, Adam Jensen's body is found in the deepest underwater regions of Panchaea amidst pieces of the Hiron Project. It is pulled from the water by an Illuminati-controlled recovery team and is secretly sent back to a black site facility in the Baltic Sea for identification and study.
In 2028, Paul Denton's mother, who is unable to have any more children but wants another, is approached by Majestic 12 operatives posing as fertility experts. She is told that she will be paid handsomely in exchange for participating in experimental surgery that will allow her to become pregnant. Mrs. Denton had been poor her entire life. Now she could have another child and have enough money to raise her family in comfort. The fertility experts assure her that the surgery is minor and the risk is minimal. After the parents of Paul Denton agree, the mother is implanted with a cloned embryo of Paul. Their lives have already been carefully monitored by Majestic 12 for many years. In response to the worldwide crisis caused by the org incident, the UN rushes to pass the Taggart Act, a piece of legislation designed to regulate the mechanical augmentation industry. It includes a strict classification and licensing system and requires that all augmentation products obtain an official seal before they can be sold. The Taggart Act only targets mechanical augmentation products and the companies that make them. To cope with rising violence and racism against augmented people, governments all over the world independently enact legislation to protect their augmented citizens. Disturbed by the failure of many of these new laws to see augmented citizens as victims of the org incident, grassroots pro-org support groups all over the world begin banding together. By July, they have chosen a name, the Augmented Rights Coalition, or ARC, and a spokesperson to lead them in Talos Rucker. They were hit hard by both the Taggart Act and a variety of local government laws and embargoes. The mechanical augmentation industry starts to collapse. Its final death throes are accompanied by a boom in black market suppliers and the criminal elements supporting them. Back in the US, Megan Reed accepts a job at VersaLife and moves to San Francisco to begin her life anew. Her first project, codenamed The Orchid, is ostensibly meant to be a cure for AIDS, but draws heavily on the work she had been doing at Seraph Industries before the org incident. Prague's newly anti-org government cancels the Santos Group's contract and seizes control of the Utilec complex, declaring that the facility will henceforth be used as permanent housing for unlicensed orgs. They begin relocating hundreds of augmented citizens into it. The complex gains a new nickname, Golem City. Information about Bell Tower Associates' involvement in human trafficking gains worldwide attention when the Collective, a group of activist hackers, leak details about an alleged black site facility located near the Spratly Islands. Already reeling from the loss of over a third of its Special Forces units due to the org incident, the PMC goes bankrupt. Black market sales of weapons and augmentations reach unprecedented heights. At the same time, local intelligence agencies fail to stop a series of high-profile attacks around the globe. Blaming the failures on the lack of international intelligence sharing, the UN pleads for the formation of Task Force 29, an integrated anti-terrorist intelligence and response team overseen by Interpol. Joseph Mandely is appointed to run it. Concerned by growing rumors of mistreatment and abuse leaking out of the Utelex complex, Talos Rucker decides to move there, making it the de facto headquarters of the Augmented Rights Coalition. Having been largely quiet since the death of its CEO, at the end of the year, the Taiyong Medical Corporation announces the creation of a breakthrough technology, a dampening chip which, when implanted in an augmentation, makes its user safe again. Several countries immediately add implantation of the chip to their anti-augmentation laws. In Alaska, an augmented man fitting Adam Jensen's description wakes up from a coma inside a rehabilitation center run by the World Health Organization. His memory of who he is and how he got there is sketchy at first, but within weeks, Adam Jensen's name will be added to the official list of Panchaea survivors. The events of Deus Ex Blacklight begin.
In 2029, March 17th, JC Denton is born. Scientists perfect the embryonic incubator, and additional clones grow over the next 15 to 20 years. Lucius De Beers is the richest person in the world. Picus Group now controls 94% of the world's media. In London, Bell Tower Associates quietly sells its Special Forces division to an undisclosed buyer and lays off a bulk of its remaining augmented staff, and then rebrands what is left of itself as Tarvos Security Services. Hit hard by regulatory measures, cancelled contracts, and anti-augmentation sentiment in Detroit, not to mention the prolonged convalescence of its CEO and founder, Seraph Industries declares bankruptcy. Many of its assets will be snatched up by Taiyong Medical, and which was one of the only companies to survive the industry's entire collapse. Dozens are killed in Prague when a bomb goes off inside a high-priced hotel. Picus News reveals that government officials had been meeting there and fingers the Augmented Rights Coalition as a suspect. Callus Rucker denies it. 2 months later, a second bomb explodes, this time inside of a police station. Task Force 29 opens up a covert field office in Prague to investigate these attacks. Faced with a continuing humanitarian crisis over the mechanically augmented that only seems to be getting worse, the UN Security Council drafts the Human Restoration Act, a resolution intended to address the status of augmented people worldwide. After much debate, both internally and publicly, it is scheduled to be voted on in November. And this is when the events of Deus Ex Blacklight continue, the events of Deus Ex Hardline begin, the events of Deus Ex Universe Children's Crusade, Deus Ex Go, Deus Ex Universe The Dawning Darkness, and Deus Ex Mankind Divided all take place in November, and also possibly some of October of this year. The events of Breach take place here as well. A confidential UN report warns that Earth's population will hit 10 billion by 2040, 10 years earlier than expected, and that without moderation, this rate of growth will prove to become unsustainable. Augmented Rights Coalition is declared a terrorist organization by the United Nations formally.
After the HIV cure is released in 2030, new antibiotic-resistant diseases appear that were thought to be under control. Resistant strains of tuberculosis hit the developing nations, particularly India, very hard. Also, an influenza pandemic spreads around the world, killing millions of people after a researcher accidentally releases samples of the deadly 1918 flu virus, Spanish flu, from bodies buried under the North Polar ice cap. Together, these pandemics left the population notably smaller than it was 100 years earlier. VersaLife is instrumental in fighting these epidemics. VersaLife soon branches to embrace all forms of science and commerce. At an unknown time between 2031 and 2035, Majestic 12 executes a coup against the Illuminati.
Also in 2030, a cure for AIDS is developed by VersaLife. A major earthquake hits the west coast, destroying most of San Francisco and dumping all of Los Angeles and most of Southern California south of Lompoc into the ocean. Rumors are that the earthquake was caused by some conspiracy cult who planted low radiation nuclear explosives along the San Andreas Fault. The earthquake forces the government to declare the west coast, or what is left of it, a disaster area.
In 2031, Utah declares independence and annexes Arizona and Nevada. They are followed by fringe groups in Texas. Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming form the Northwest Secessionist Forces and secede from the US. This year marks the start of the Northwest War and the siege of Squalnomi. All of these attempts to secede ultimately fail. Martial law enacted by the US government following the reintegration of the rogue states into the motherland continues for many years in some areas.
In 2033, on November 20th, Alex Denton's assigned false birth date is stated. And in May 13th, Nick Posbeck's assigned false birth date is also stated.
In 2034, experiments begin on second generation of clones, age under 5. Toxicology study found no carcinogenic effects at chlorine concentrations 1,000 times higher than the Environmental Protection Agency revised Kyoto standards. On February 25th, Wade Walker's assigned false birth date.
In 2035, having lined up all of the Illuminati's political, financial, military, and religious arms beneath it, Majestic 12 inherits the mantle of de facto ruler of Asia, Eastern Europe, and South America. Its rebellion is now complete. Paul and JC Denton's parents are killed by Majestic 12. JC is sent to Switzerland for schooling under the watchful eye of the Majestic 12.
In 2036, Paul Denton attends a university.
In the 2040s, Tracer Tong begins working on the AI project nicknamed Ava Johnson. Common emotional centers in the brain are discovered sometime between 2042 and 2046.
In 2040, Paul Denton, aged at 22, graduates from the university and joins UNATCO.
In 2042, Sporting Weapons Act is then passed. National secessionist forces are formed by American citizens refusing to give up their ordnance. Led by Leon Woods, they intend to liberate Washington, Montana, Oregon, and Northern California.
In 2045, Leon Woods dies during his infamous Last Stand.
In 2046, in response to the Upper West Side bombing in New York that killed 45 people and wounded over 100, newly enacted grid zoning laws allow the police to wall off regions of Manhattan and its surrounding boroughs. Foot traffic between these zones is prohibited, and traveling between zones is restricted to authorized subways or highways subject to police surveillance. The crash of 46 occurs. The construction of an unnamed building in Paris is stopped. Work on Ambrosia project is suspected to have begun in this year as well.
In 2047, most likely is the year of Alex Denton's birth in the cloning vats at Area 51. The Somnolente Ile, i.e. Sleeping Island, scandal in France occurs. French President Sarah and reputed members of the Zuganov crime family meet at Côte d'Azur in an attempt to funnel almost 3 billion credits of tainted money through French banks. Beth Duclair is reported but not proven to be one of the banking interests involved. Accusations against President Borges Manoury's administration, linking key members of his Council of Ministers to the scandal, resurfaced in several tabloid publications 5 years later. It's rumoured to be the approximate beginning of the work on Aquinas by Page Industries, and J.C. Denton graduates from Swiss school.
In 2049, Dr. Moreau starts to work in the Majestic 12 lab under UNATCO.
In the 2050s, Paul Denton becomes the first successfully nano-augmented human. Silhouette sabotages the internet broadcast of the World Cup by inserting 20th century style advertisements mocking the excesses of mechanical augmentation, and UNATCO and Interpol storm the Knights Templar headquarters in Paris and destroy the organization. 15,234 young people serve sentences in the state's FBI-run good behavior camps, a legacy of the Northwest War. The Statue of Liberty is destroyed. UNATCO frames Silhouette. The Grey Death Plague begins. Beth Duclair is assassinated by Majestic 12 while attempting to protect her daughter, Nicolette, from the attack. After her death, Beth Duclair's body is dissected and placed in cryonic storage. Paul Denton discovers the truth behind the Grey Death Plague, learning that UNATCO is working with Majestic 12 to control the supply of the Ambrosia vaccine to garner political influence. In response, he secretly begins working with the NSF as their informant inside UNATCO. Suspecting Paul's betrayal but lacking evidence to prove it, Gunther Hermann warns his superiors not to trust Paul. Gary Savage's scientists escape from Area 51. They destroy the Universal Constructor and steal the technology. J.C. Denton joins UNATCO and officially becomes the second nano-augmented human. Officially.
In 2052, the events of the original Deus Ex take place. American corporations pay about 5% of federal taxes compared to 50% back in 1945. About 2% of Americans are self-employed compared to the 90% in the 1900s. President Philip Meade's approval rating is now 35%. President Meade unilaterally pays the United States' late dues to the United Nations, defying Congress for the third time this year. Members of both parties criticized this move. Responding to an outbreak of Grey Death in New York, a mass grave is dug in Gateway National Park. Worldwide flooding from melting polar ice caps is at its minimum. A chlorine spill contaminates the Hudson River and leaves East River almost lifeless. Bob Page makes a record donation of over 10 million credits to the clinics and hospices Association of New York, the largest private donation in the organization's history. US government regulators have nationalized the third airline this year. The Federal Aviation Administration claims that the airline's management botched the safety records. Beth Duclair is awarded the Legion of Honor posthumously. The award is accepted on her behalf by her famously reputed lover, President Alain Bourgeois-Manoury. The VersaLife building in Hong Kong is bombed, leaving at least 35 dead and over 100 wounded. McMoran Global Steel win a contract to transport ore from the Zhou Inlai lunar mining complex. Soon after the first mass driver, a vehicle used to transport this ore, is deployed, it crashes into the earth, killing over 2,000 people in Ibadan, Nigeria. There are 231,000 PageNet banking terminals worldwide. President Meade declares martial law in New York, shutting down city services. Public Health Directive 27 is issued, ordering all bodies to be cremated, and a crematorium opens in the Yankee Stadium. President Meade, rumored to be infected with the Grey Death himself, announces the declaration of martial law throughout the United States, citing a fundamental threat to the American way of life in the form of organized, insidious terrorism. Meade appoints Walton Simmons, director of FEMA, to spearhead an interim council tasked with managing the government response. 24 hours later, the country is in turmoil and teeters on the edge of entire social collapse. JC Denton merges with Helios. The process overloads the Aquinas router, triggering an explosion which kills Bob Page and destroys the global communication network. This results in the collapse, the worst economic disaster in history, and a new dark age. Countries disintegrate overnight, plunging the world into chaos. Unable to control the power of Helios, JC Denton is isolated in Antarctica and falls into a prolonged coma. And on May 13th, Nick Porzbach's incept date.
In 2053, Illuminati Chad Dumier and Nicolette Duclair initiate their plans to re-establish order. Dumier takes over the WTO, while Duclair, in the guise of Her Holiness, founds the Order Church. The WTO incorporates the city of Trier, Germany. Eldrin Braden, an influential local businessman, is driven from power as a result of the incorporation.
In 2054, on February 25th, Wade Walker's incept date, and on March 17th, JC Denton's incept date.
In 2055, on November the 20th, Alex Denton's incept date.
Now on to the 2060s. In 2067, El Nino causes a significant shift in nanite swirl 9, one of the 15 global nanite swirls.
In 2069, Donna Morgan becomes WTO security chief, and Paul Denton tests new biomod architecture on himself. Experiment fails, Paul goes into a coma and is cryogenically preserved to prevent death.
On to the 2070s now. In 2071, the WTO Charter with Seattle is ratified by a referendum, resulting in citywide riots, so-called refinery riots. Protesters claimed that the result of the referendum were falsified and did not reflect the will of the people, particularly those living outside the enclave. The riots lasted for several days, resulting in multiple deaths. The first human expedition to Mars is completed, with the words "mankind is now the inhabitant of two worlds" broadcast in both English and Spanish. Conspiracy theorists contend that the landing was staged.
In 2072, with no practical uses, mechanical augmentation is made completely obsolete due to its inferiority to nano-augmentation, which is now common. The events of Deus Ex Invisible War take place. Chicago is destroyed in a terrorist attack by the Knights Templar. Alex Denton awakes JC Denton from his coma. Alex Denton uploads the Aquinas protocol to either Paul and JC Denton and step into their infusion chamber in Liberty Island to give the Helios AI the perfected augment structure. Alex Denton's perfected nanites are distributed to every human being on the planet, which leads to a peaceful post-human civilization, governed, not ruled, by a benevolent, all-knowing AI. Or 2, the Illuminati in Liberty Island. The Illuminati gains control of all communications and operates the world economy and society in secret through Aquinas and an orbital science platform called Ophelia, allowing high stability for the price of government control and ignorance. Or 3, the Knights Templar in Liberty Island. Alex then kills both Paul and JC. The Denton's blood and biological architecture are then used to eradicate all types of augmentations and transgenics. This leads humanity into a dark age of Luddism and fear of technology.
Now finally, in the 2200s, after Alex Denton murders every possible leader of humanity in 2072, without a central authority, humanity descends into the worst chaos and anarchy imagined. 2 centuries of war have scorched the earth and all life has been destroyed. The only remaining survivors are the Omar, who begin to instigate space travel in search of a better homeworld. Note, though, that this is only one of possible endings of Deus Ex Invisible War and has not been established as canon, so this is just the result of if you choose the Knights Templar on Liberty Island as your choice. And with that, that is the end of the timeline.
Thank you for sticking with us to this point. If you did, this is obviously the start of our playlist into Deus Ex lore. You can expect a lot more contributions to this playlist. We both love this game, love the world, and love everything that it means, and have been revisiting whilst we wait for Cyberpunk 2077. So we hope that you join us on the rest of our journey into the lore of Deus Ex.
Yep, and with that, we'll see you hopefully next time in our next Deus Ex lore video.
Bye bye.